I decided not to post one yesterday because it was April Fool's Day, and I'm no fool. But here we go. Here's another subscriber Q&A. Number 4. I've actually kept up to it so far. I think it was 4 weeks ago that I decided that I was going to do this series. And this may be my longest running series of all time, because the content is entirely provided by you, the viewer. As long as you're a Twitch subscriber to me and ask questions in Discord. And if you are, or if you'd like to be, then the links are in the description below, along with the timestamps for each of these questions. Let's get to it. So Tygur Triple Tygur Triple 7 kicks us off by saying, what other games besides TF2, Overwatch, and Worms do you play, if any? Any favorite game or genres? I mean, obviously at the moment I'm playing Sekiro. I love the Dark Souls games and the Dark Souls-esque games. I mean, Sekiro is kind of, you know, Souls-esque. I was having this argument on stream last night. It's very similar kind of genre, the incredibly difficult, atmospheric feel, big bosses, stuff like that. I think Sekiro is absolutely fantastic. Absolutely highly recommend it. One of the best games that I've played in such a long time. Now, outside of the games that I play on stream, I don't play games. If you aren't seeing me playing a game, I'm not playing a game. Because apart from, I mean, chess, I play chess on my phone. I play quite a bit of chess, actually. But outside of that, I really don't play any other game that I can think of, unless I'm playing on stream. I figure most of the time, gaming for me was a social occasion, more so than actually enjoying a storyline or something like that. So it's rare that I would ever even have the inclination to want to to want to play a video game without streaming it, because why not? I mean, if I'm playing the game anyway, then why wouldn't I stream it? It seems that simple to me. As for why I don't play more games, I mean, I don't even particularly enjoy playing video games that much recently. Now that I've explored so many other things that I can do with my time, playing video games in general, unless I'm streaming them and having like that entire kind of atmosphere around it, just seems like a bit of time that could be spent better doing other things, learning new skills, making content, hanging out with friends in person, stuff like that. So I definitely used to play a ton of games, but at the moment my Steam library is just racking up, and I just keep returning back to the old classics. babyblu says, since you said you intentionally yoinked your northern accent away on purpose for casting reasons, which you can find my details of what I was talking about there in a previous subscriber Q&A, I think probably number 1. Did you do the same with your voice? I was watching some old Sideshow recently, since I'm a fake Overwatch only fan, and I can't help but notice you seem to have had a second voice break at some point in early 2016. Was that on purpose? Let me think. Early 2016 was when I started doing Overwatch content, which is interesting because the point at which I personally remember changing my dialect and the way that I spoke on camera, at the very least, was probably more like 2014 to 2015, probably 2015. So perhaps the timing's just a little off there from babyblu, or perhaps it's you know, the internal idea of what I did didn't match up to the reality. I can't say that I've gone back and checked a bunch of different VODs looking for it, but let's address this one at a time. I frequently change or like to try and alter things about myself that I think, you know, most people would consider fairly fundamental parts of their personality, but I just enjoy tweaking with them to see what's possible. And yeah, I mean, obviously a load of different broadcasters change their voice and how they speak. And working with Gex, a guy who used to cast TF2, I was particularly taken by the way that he spoke. He had a very, what was the classic line? Clockwork in from behind. He used to speak like that, like quite gravelly. And then looking at how other broadcasters spoke as well, you know, I used to speak very much, I think, in like the top of my throat, in the front of my mouth a little bit. Although I had this accent that tends to sit in the back of the throat as well, like, no, I don't want to do that. Like classic northern UK accent, which I think sounds a little silly at times. And so, yeah, over the course of doing casts and stuff like that, I was trying to emulate, by trying to professionalize the way that I was doing it, the easiest way I found of doing that was by emulating other people. And although you don't intend to kind of keep that style and the emulation, over time you just kind of adapt stuff like that. So it wasn't like I deliberately said, okay, today I'm going to speak more deeply or whatever. But like everything, a human being is a changing, a movable feast. It's not... you're not the same person you were many years ago, and no facet about you is really very similar to when you were a child. And so things adapt and they change, and this is just one of them. And as with the accent, it now comes fairly effortlessly, and the voice as well. Not that I've deliberately changed it. I haven't said that. I was doing a voiceover recently for the Overwatch League, doing a voiceover for their new... Okay, well, here you go. This is going to be a bit of leaks, but a new kind of series that they're doing about tactics, using some guys from the Blitz people. And do you guys remember their fantastic video series on tactics, where they would break everything down and show you exactly what happened and replay it and stuff like that? Overwatch League is starting to produce some of their own. I did a voiceover for that, and the guy that was working with me said said something like, "Oh yeah, give me that scary Sideshow voice again," because just by going over the lines a couple of times, I changed up the variants of how I was saying them. And when you're reading a line, you can think to yourself, okay, now I'll say it as if I'm doing like a movie trailer or something. You're not emulating somebody in particular, but you're emulating a style. And I think the stylistic change is probably what you're identifying somewhere in 2015, 2016. Yeah, there you go. Quite a convoluted answer, but there you go. I'm not known for my concision. Dip says, what's your opinion on Seoul's new philosophy of having a full second team that are their control specialists, seeing as they now have a 12-man roster? I don't know whether they're going to be control specialists forever. I think identifying this as Seoul's new trend, or having a full second team that they're going to run the whole time on control, might be missing the bigger picture a little bit, perhaps, because they only did this towards the end, in the very end of the season and the playoffs. And there's no guarantee that this team is going to be more practiced on control, or they want to continue with that kind of style or whatever in stage 2, or perhaps the heroes that you have to play on control don't fit that particular team, and it ends up being the team that was better at one game mode is better at the other game mode, etc. But the wider point here that is very interesting about Seoul is that they do have 2 separate teams that are able to do this. And I think this is very unusual for teams. We saw the San Francisco Shock, who have an incredible depth of roster and very good coaching staff, and even they really failed to pull this kind of thing off when they subbed in Rascal, Striker, and Smurf for Busan, and for a couple of other control maps as well, where they want Smurf to play the Orisa or the Wrecking Ball, and they want Striker to be able to play Widowmaker, and Rascal to be able to play Pharah. Well, it didn't work for them. They really threw the match against Gladiators, which was one of the reasons they were so low-seeded coming into the playoffs, and they looked very dysfunctional as a team. Now, the same can't be said about Seoul. Their B team looked very capable. Now, what's the difference there? I'm not sure that I could really tell you. I think, for starters, they change up their shot calling quite significantly. So it's presumably a whole different load of people shot calling. I mean, you've got Fissure and you've got Jexa in the main team that play the majority of the maps, both known for their shot calling. And then you have Toby, who at one point did shot call, but not for a long time. And then also you have Marvel, who comes in alongside Fitz. But as far as I'm aware, all 3 of those are not really known for their strong, decisive shot calling. Also, additionally, how are they getting good scrim time? Are they splitting scrim time? Are they always subbing that team in for control? It seems incredibly strange to me, and should, by all the models of how the other teams are doing it, not have such great success. Because most teams, when they try and pull off stuff like this, really suffer because they lack the scrim time to be able to make it work. If you're playing a scrim block and only 1 out of the 4 maps is control, well, this team is only getting a quarter of the playtime of every other team in OWL, assuming the other teams in OWL aren't changing their rosters. And your main team is only getting 3/4 of the time that the others are. And players like Jaehong have to adapt to playing with Jexa or playing with Toby, and these kind of things. So I think it's quite a unique situation that Seoul's found themselves in and crafted for themselves. Let's not pretend that this is something that Seoul just stumbled into. This is either excellent from the players or excellent from the coaching staff, or credit to the the players' ability to be flexible between different rosters or not need that much scrim time. There is something going on here, but I don't think we have enough data yet or insight from the team to really be able to tell what it is that Seoul are doing better than the other teams. But if it's something that can be bottled and used in a bunch of different teams, a bunch of different systems, then perhaps we could see more teams trying to emulate this. At the moment, though, most teams are really struggling when they take this kind of approach, which is why we haven't seen too much of it in the rest of the Overwatch League. Precoixious asks, how do you feel about a players' union? This is quite a broad question, and I'm certainly not the most well-versed on the legality surrounding a players' union and this kind of stuff. So there's not too much that you can really say. First of all, a players' union is going to be required at some point. With the professionalism of esports, with the developer having so much control in any game, with the league now being set up by the developer in a lot of these cases, like the LCS, like the Overwatch League, what else? Oh, Call of Duty World League as well, now starting to franchise and go into this kind of stuff. With franchised leagues, the players definitely at some point are going to need to unionize, I think. Traditional sports does it, and it's pretty much a requirement for them. Otherwise, they'd end up getting, I don't want to say unfairly treated, because it's not like there's any malice involved, but it's more like you get unfairly valuated, I think. I think that's the biggest thing that the players' union, generally speaking, does, is make sure that the value of the players and their wishes and their demands are spoken for, and so that they don't just get worked and paid a moderate amount for the work that they do. If you really are the best in the world at the thing that you do and it's sustainable to pay you X amount, then the players' union should be trying to get as much as possible, as well as making sure that you're not overworked and you don't have too many commitments here and here and here, and you're able to, sell yourself in X way, in terms of sponsorships and stuff like that. This is more what a players' union does. The kind of disputes where it's like, the idea that the players' union is there to stop the league, like, hard shafting people, I don't think that generally happens in professional systems like that, but sure, it could be useful there as well. Having said all of that, I don't think we're at a place in esports where a players' union is required right now, because the system seems to work relatively well at the moment without one, by advocates from the esports players, agents, and managers, and liaising with the teams, and the teams themselves being at odds with the league and a franchise system on some of their demands. I mean, the teams don't want their players overworked, because then the players complain to the teams, etc. So the teams then pass on those requests to the league, stuff like that. I also think, though, that the biggest stumbling block in this entire conversation, and what makes the entire conversation almost a moot point, is that at some point, it's just up to the players to figure out the legality and get in touch with somebody who knows how to set up a system like this and pay a shit ton of money and actually put the infrastructure in place. And it becomes pretty difficult because you presumably are going to need a different players' union for every different game. They're going to be set up in different ways. You need somebody to really put in the legwork and go forwards and make the effort to overcome all of the legal issues and create a players' union in itself. Until the players themselves decide that it's worthwhile to expend that amount of money and effort and time into creating a players' union for the Overwatch League, because presumably this question is about the Overwatch League, then it will simply never happen. I mean, why would anybody else create a players' union other than the players? LilRainbow asks, what's something you're hoping to bring from your personal streams to the desk, if you can bring anything at all? I would like to think that I've brought a bunch of stuff from my personal streams to the desk, just in terms of humor and my personality and the way that I, interact with breaking down plays and stuff like that. When I do, a VOD review, or a VOD review snippet that I then clip to YouTube, it's very similar to when I break stuff down on the desk as well. And when people ask me questions on stream, when they're asking about teams and stuff like that, I really don't hold much back when I'm on the desk as well. It's not like I'm trying to dance around the subject or feel afraid of calling people out when I'm on the desk. The only thing that I have to avoid doing is, using ridiculous terminology like what an absolute unit of a chad, or yotta chad and stuff like that. I mean, those are in-jokes between me and my stream. I'm not going to try and take those to the main broadcast, because there's, 20 times, at the very minimum, 20 times more people watching. In fact, no, that's not even true. It's more like 40 times at the very minimum. People watching the Overwatch League than are watching my stream. Then I also obviously can't swear, which I frequently do on stream, and which I'm sure a lot of people gather a lot of humor from, just because it's an easy way of showing that you're, passionate about a certain thing. Something specific, though, that I have pitched to them that I would love to bring from my stream kind of atmosphere into the Overwatch League is a hot takes kind of roasting session where people would send in tweets with a certain hashtag, like owl roast me or something like that. Obviously, that wouldn't be the hashtag, but it's like owl hot takes, for example. Hashtag owl hot takes. And if you use that hashtag, you would be kind of buying in, consenting to the fact that the hashtag would then be collected, used on broadcast, and we would pick out either the dumbest ones from a fan, the funniest ones from a fan, the ones that we agree with, and have like a roasting session, which you can't normally roast fans' opinions that much, because they're your audience and you don't want to put them off. You don't want to put their back up, right? But I think it can be a very fun thing to roast people's opinions as long as they're on board with it. I mean, there's a whole subreddit called Roast Me, right? And people come into my chat all the time and they're laughing about how other people in the chat are smooth brains, banana brains, I'm an idiot. It's just a bit of light-hearted humor at the end of the day, but it gives us an opportunity to talk about some analysis whilst also incorporating some humorous elements in there as well. So that, I think, would be a pretty fun segment if I just wander off and ruin someone's dumb fan opinion on Reddit or something, if they consented to it, if they use this hashtag that would be, the implication would be that we were able to use it on stream. Can you Jump Boy 88? I love people's names, man. Can you give a rundown of what an average day or week looks like for the broadcast team? Lots of meetings and prep. I tell you what, I can't really give you a rundown of what an average day or week looks like for a lot of people behind the scenes, because I don't know how much work they put in when I'm not there. I don't see it. But I'm sure it's a shit ton. I mean, I talk to Captain Planet a lot, who works with stats, and I know that he's constantly working on cool stats, because he'll send me stuff on, like, I don't know, a Monday night really late, where most people aren't. I'm streaming Sekiro. I'm not thinking about the Overwatch League. I don't think about it every day and night. Almost, though. And he'll send me some stat that he's been working on and ask my opinion on it, and see how it could be tweaked, or whether there's some confounding variable that we haven't thought of. We'll brainstorm, could this be misleading in some way, and try and work out all the kinks before it goes to the broadcast. I'm not saying that he just does that with me, of course, but part of a wider conversation. But we'll sometimes DM about specifics. So I know that he's putting in a ton of work behind the scenes. I live with Jonathan, so I know that he's putting in a ton of work, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what an average day or week looks like for them. So I'll run you through my day or week, though, for sure, and that's similar to a lot of the other casters and analysts. And it basically starts on, well, let's start at the Monday, right? So Monday is our day off, and normally that's kind of just chilling out. I don't do much on a Monday. I'll basically, I always have to keep up with what's going on, so I subscribe to all of the teams, YouTubes and Twitters and all of this stuff. So any news that comes through, I'm always scrolling through social media, keeping up with their Instagram stories, stuff like that. If there are snippets, then I'll remember them, or sometimes I'll write them down if they're very specific and I want to bring them back up on the desk. Some quote from a coach in some video somewhere. But in general, Monday, I'm not doing too much. I'm just keeping up with what's going on in the scene. Tuesday, I'll start thinking about what I want. I'll start thinking about the week going forwards. So I'll start thinking about what the games are, what the big matches are, what some of the storylines might be, get them into my head. Again, I'm not doing too much work. I'm not writing too much stuff down. I might, on one of the Monday or Tuesday, I might do a VOD review or something like this on stream. I don't do VOD reviews that much that are off stream, but I do sometimes look at stats and map overview VODs, which are not public, so I'm not allowed to stream those. But usually not on a Monday or Tuesday. I try and save Monday or Tuesday for either chilling out and streaming other content or streaming VOD review stuff from the week that can be entertaining for everybody. And I'll do YouTube videos and stuff like that. So when I said chill, I mean produce content, but on my own personal channel. Then, after I've kind of got the ideas in my head of what I want to do on the Tuesday, on the Wednesday, we have a meeting with everybody involved in the casting. Everybody involved in the casting, everybody involved in the desk, some of the big production people as well. And we go through what our big picture storylines are for the week so that we're all connected on the same level with what we want to talk about, who we want to push, what storylines we feel might come up. We have a certain thought about... I think Sinatra is the player to watch in this match because X and X happened. He's got a rivalry with this guy from 2 weeks ago. And someone's like, oh yeah, I forgot that he had that history back with that team then. So it gets everybody on the same page for how we want to operate. Then we've got some more individual meetings. Some people go off to record different voiceovers and stuff like that. Some people go off to record videos like the access granted and these kind of things. What else do we do on a Wednesday? And Wednesday is the day that we also do the Watchpoint meetings. So we meet to plan out our weekly pre-show. So what bits do we want to run? What interviews have we got? What talking points do we want for the days? And then we update them, day to day as well. But Wednesday's our big meeting day. And then the post show as well. The post show obviously has it's a bit more like fly by the seat of your pants because you have to kind of collect all the stuff from the day as it happens. You can't really plan too far in advance because you don't know what's going to happen day to day in the Overwatch League. It's not actually scripted. Then the day ends up being finishing fairly early. Go back and either chill out and do some stuff on my personal channel or go for drinks with some of the casters and chill out and chat a bit about the games and stuff. Or sometimes I'll go down to our area, the casting area, our little chill out zone, and we've got some PCs that are hooked up to stats, and I can go through the stats database myself and try and pick out some interesting matchups, see if there's anything that Captain Planet has missed, or Reinforce and Matt have missed, our two researchers as well, and see if there's any cool storylines that emerge from the statistics. Or the overhead views as well. That's another option for Wednesday. Then Thursday we turn up. I think we turn up something like 3 hours before the broadcast. I'm not 100% sure on the timings. I guess I could look at my schedule, but I'm just roughly speaking. We turn up something like 3 hours before the broadcast. We'll do some rehearsals. Then we have to get changed into wardrobe. Oh, no, first we go through the meeting. So first we have another meeting to make sure that we're aligned with what we're doing for the pre-show of Watchpoint and have some ideas for what we want to do there. And we have the flow of the show kind of down. And then we'll rehearse. Sorry, no, I'm getting the order of this totally mixed up. Okay, so we come in 3 hours before. We do the Watchpoint meeting, which should only last about 15 minutes to half an hour. Then we go and get in our dress in the wardrobe, because it can't be wearing this stuff on camera. Then they have to put makeup on me, because it can't be looking like this on camera as well. And then we'll do rehearsals. So when we were doing the playoffs, we did ABC rehearsals separately to Watchpoint rehearsals, but most of the time we just do the Watchpoint rehearsals. And then we are going from there straight into doing Watchpoint. We do Watchpoint. Once we finish that, we then go into the control room at the back, which is where all the producers sit, and we watch the games from there, where we have multiple views. We have access to the team comms. We have access to the producers that are actually making the halftime shows. At some point, we'll go into the EVS room, which is where we gather the replays, except we're not gathering the replays. We go and talk to the team that are gathering the replays and the highlights, and we communicate with them. If we want to build a package, we communicate with them what highlights we want to pull, who we want to be focusing on to try and pull highlights for. And if we want to build an Insights Powered by Intel or some kind of telestration segment, we have to go into there and build it with them. So I say, I want this viewpoint, I want it to pan over like this, and then I sit down and I draw the lines, and then it's saved, and then it's sent to the video screen at halftime, and I go up and I go, blah, 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 blah. You see? Insights Powered by Intel. This kind of stuff. So then we're watching the game. In the break, for the halftime, we're out there doing halftime. As soon as the break finishes, we're straight back on. So there isn't really a break for us analyzing, because I mean, the casters take the half times as like a bit of a chill out zone, get a bit of water, stuff like that. Although we're not required to perform as much as the casters are, it can be a little draining because there's literally no time to just chill out. You eat whenever we get food. We're just eating whilst watching the game, because if you miss something key in the game, you're not going to be able to talk about it afterwards. So you really have to keep your attention glued, and then as soon as the game finishes, there's a 2-minute ad interlude, and then you're on doing the half times. And then so throughout the day as well, we're building up an idea of what we want to do on the post show for Watchpoint, collecting highlights, thinking of ideas, writing the flow of what we think the story of the day has been. We'll have prepped some skits in the Wednesday interview previously, perhaps, and we'll go through that with the producers for the post-show of Watchpoint as well. Then when the day ends, we're on for Watchpoint, we do that, then we do the Twitch Q&A as well, or we, set up for that. Somebody asks them the questions. And after that, it's normally about 10, 11 p.m., something like that. So we'll maybe go out for a drink, or maybe come back home and just chill out for a bit, or sometimes gonna fire up my stream and do some a VOD review, or just chat about the games that happened. That's certainly something that I'm intended to do a little bit more today. And then that concept for Thursday basically repeats on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And every day we're kind of iterating on the process, and then we're back to Monday. So there you go. I hope that's given you some idea of what an average day or week looks like for the broadcast team. At the moment, I'm doing a lot of work, but it doesn't feel like work because I'm just enjoying it. The Leogend says, if you could make a dream roster with 2 players from each region, so 8 players, a team with 2 subs, what would it be? So 8 players, but 2 players from each region. So there's only 4 regions. So that must be North America, Europe, Korea, and China, right? So I actually prepped this before because I knew that it would take me a while to figure out what team I wanted. And this is the way that I basically did it, is China has the least talent in the region, just in terms of how much our level talent they have in the region. China, in my opinion, has the least out of the 4 regions. So I'm going to start with China and make sure that I actually get the best from China. Because if I end up with someone shit from China, it's going to ruin the whole team. So I'm going to pick Gushue and Leave from China. Leave turns 18 in October. He's not eligible for OWL at the moment, but if I was building this for 2020, then fair enough, he is eligible. So I'm going to go with Gushue and Leave. So that gives me a main tank and like a flex DPS who can also play Widowmaker and stuff like that. Leave's incredibly flexible, really talented. And I really like the way that Gushue and Leave played together on Team China in the World Cup. Okay, but I don't think that Gushue is... Alright, so then let's follow that formula. So then from China, we'll go to North America and Europe. We'll leave Korea for last because you can pick anybody from a huge array of top Korean players, and they're just fantastic. So North America has a bunch of good players, actually. It's really developed as a region recently. So I think Moth is a standout. They don't have the greatest flex supports in the world. Sleepy is the obvious one, the standout candidate, but even Sleepy, I think I'd probably rather take a European or Korean flex support, so I'm going to leave him aside. Diva, Space, and Note are both very good, but again, they're not really world-class, in my opinion, compared to the top Korean divas, guys like Fury, Meko, Janu, maybe even Doko at this point. So... okay, so I'm not going to go for that. So what I've decided is to go for Moth and then a DPS. So I've got Gushue, Leave, and Moth at the moment. And I know that I want an NA DPS, but I don't know which yet. So then we go to EU. So I need to pick if I want a Korean diva, so I want Fury. So I'm going to Korea, I'm picking up Fury. I think he's the real standout off tank that can also play DPS to a pretty decent level and can play, like, he plays a really good Hog, he plays a really good Zarya, and he plays a really good Diva. Like, probably the best in the world at the collective 3 of them. And then he can also play some DPS picks to a pretty decent level as well. Not amazing, but pretty good. So to pair alongside him, to kind of boost the main tank position, I'm going to go with Mano. Because the Korean main tanks are the best in the world, absolutely. Super was up there in Stage 1 this year, so could have been a decent pick. But Super and Gushue, I feel like you don't have the stability there that Mano is going to give you. So Mano and Fury, I think, is a very strong core from Korea to build on. So I've got Mano, Fury, Gushue, Leave, Moth. Then from Europe, I'm going to go with Shaz to fill that flex support role. So the backline will be Shaz and Moth, which I think is pretty pog, honestly. And then I'm going to go with EQO as well. EQO, I know, he does count as European. He played in the European servers. He played in teams that were competing in European tournaments. So even though he is from Colombia and then moved to Israel, he counts as European in terms of his Overwatch pedigree. So then to round out the roster, because I've got EQO and Leave, I need somebody that's going to handle more of kind of the hit scan or tracer kind of roles from NA. So clearly there's two players that stand out above all others. It's Sinatra and Shawford. Now I'm not sure who I would go with actually here to round out my roster. I'm leaning more towards Sinatra, but Shawford's the safer pick, I think. Sinatra is probably going to develop into a very good player on a bunch of different roles later on in his career, especially with a good coaching staff. But at the moment, Shawford would probably be the safer pick, especially if you want to go over to stuff like McCree as well. Although you already have Leave to kind of handle the Widow, but Shawford can definitely handle himself on a bunch of different heroes, and he's very flexible, would be a good addition to the team. So the final roster would be Mano and Gushue on main tank, Fury on off tank, a backline of Moth and Shaz, and then the trio of Leave, EQO, and either Sinatra or Shawford. Formation says you have to make owl trades, not for competitive purpose, but purely for the memes. For example, Fusions to Fusion and Custa and Rascal to Dallas. What are your top 3 joke trades? I mean, Fusions to Fusion is just so good that I have to take it. That has to be number 1. I mean, you've just stolen the best joke trade in the world immediately. I'll try and come up with 3 more, though. I think the best one that I can think of like that, not like the Fusions to Fusion, but like the Custa and Rascal to Dallas, I think it'd be funny as fuck if Fisher got sold back to London, so that he'd gone from London to Gladiators to Seoul back to London. And London, you know, they're struggling at the moment. They could have done with a good Reinhardt last stage, so that to me would just be the funniest shit in the world if Fisher got sold back to London. I don't know in what universe that would happen, who knows, but that would be funny as hell. Okay, I think it would also be amazing halfway through the season if the whole of Hangzhou decided to swap with the whole of Guangzhou, because that would just ruin everybody. It's already difficult enough for people to be able to get Guangzhou and Hangzhou in their heads properly. I managed to do it, you know, a few weeks ago. Nah, it's probably been a couple of months now that I've been very comfortable with how Hangzhou and Guangzhou, you know, Guangzhou Charge, Hangzhou Spark, they're there in my head now. But if they traded brand names or if they traded players, I would be lost completely. For some reason, it's different to LA Gladiators, LA Spitfire. I always say either London Gladiators or LA Spitfire for some reason. I mean, my brain just doesn't work. But it's for some reason it's different. LA Valiant, LA Gladiators with Hangzhou, Guangzhou. Just something about it ruins my brain. Probably the unfamiliarity of the word. All right, let me see if I can think of a third joke trade that would be funny. How about Arc to Justice? That'd be funny, wouldn't it? Poor guy in a prison. Whew. Precoixious. After teamfight wins, why don't teams stagger more and let people who need ult charge do the damage? Are there just bigger, more impactful things to perfect first? Yeah, I think you've honestly hit the nail on the head there. It's something that viewers, I think, grasp onto very easily because it's a simple concept to understand, right? You can even do it in your ranked play. If you know that you've won the team fight, you can stagger people for ages, and if you know that your Zen needs to build up his Transcendence, you can let your Zen farm those people that you're keeping alive. But there's a few problems with it. First of all, there are way more important things in the game to get better. I mean, staggering basically buys you 10 seconds max in some very specific situations. And you also... And there's just way more... And that's banking on the fact that you won the team fight in the first place. If you won the team fight in the first place, things are looking gravy. Things are going real good. You want to make sure you win those team fights, so that's the most important thing. So teams are, you know, trying to perfect the actual shit that matters, really, rather than this. This is more like the cherry on the top. But I think there are also issues with staggering in general. You can't stagger somebody who's gonna you're gonna allow them to get their ult up. I mean, if you try and stagger a Winston or something, and I don't know, you sleep him or you stop him from escaping in some way. I mean, for starters, that's another issue, right? Is you can't even stagger most heroes because they have escape mechanisms. But if you try to stagger a Soldier 76 or something like that, and you just allow him to get free damage on you, he's too risky to keep alive because he might just Helix rocket one of your squishies and get a kill. And that might allow them to... That trade is like beneficial for the team that's just about to spawn because you're out of position because you're trying to stagger this guy and he gets a kill on you. So you've got to make sure that they don't have escape. They don't have some way of burst killing you. And also... they need to not be in a position where you're worried about them charging their ult. Like, for example, a Zen. You don't really want to stagger a Zen because if you allow the Zen to free farm you, they're getting Transcendence up. So, that's the reason that you mostly only see it with Baby D.Va. She's got no ability to kill. She's got no ability to escape because even if she activates her mech, she's just feeding even more ult back to you. And then she has no ability to, like... to really build up ult herself as well, because the ultimate that she's building is a totally different ult that doesn't even impact the fight. So yeah, it's quite a niche situation, but it's something that viewers tend to think about a lot because it's a concept that's very easily understood. morphyAU says, at some point during the next few weeks while we have a break in between stages, this was a week ago, any chance for a guitar jam or song learning stream? Hashtag VarietyStreamer. I don't have any plans currently to play guitar on stream. First of all, because my guitar's a little bit broken. I think the body is warped a little bit, possibly with the humidity or the temperature change, but there shouldn't have been that much temperature change last year in my room because it was always AC'd, but something has gone wrong with it. It may be that the neck is bent, or I don't know. Anyway, I need to get it to a guitar tuning shop because it's got some nasty fret buzz. It's not even fret buzz, it's body buzz that would sound horrible on stream. And also, I don't think you would find it particularly entertaining for me to be learning songs on stream because, as Johnny and Bren can tell you, last year when I was relearning a bunch of songs that I'd forgotten because I only picked up the guitar again after about a 2-year break in 2018 and had to relearn a bunch of the songs because I could kind of feel the muscle memory, but it was also not right present at the front of my brain. So I had to, go back through all of them and relearn them again. But it's just incessantly repeating the same stuff. They were nearly driven crazy by how many times they heard the same refrain from Jason Mraz's "I'm Yours." The same do 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 do. I mean, that I was playing in like a fingerstyle rhythm, and it was driving them nuts. So I don't think that would be particularly entertaining for the chat, but perhaps sometime. Jason says, what would it take for you to get a box tattoo in honor of chat? I have no intention, honestly, of ever getting a tattoo, but perhaps I'll change my mind on that front. But certainly not a box tattoo. You can go fuck yourselves. But generally, I'm averse in general to the idea of getting a tattoo myself, because I know how much I have changed in the last 3 years. Certainly changed massively within the last 5 years. I'm almost unrecognizable to the person that I was 10 years ago. And, I mean, beyond that, I'm just literally a child. So, the idea that I would know, or even like, or value, or be the same person that I am when I get the tattoo compared to when I'm looking back on the tattoo, it's a marker of important things in your life. Sure, it's kind of memories of who you were and what was valuable to you at that point in your life. But I don't value that kind of stuff. I don't really value memories or notable things. They all just kind of blend into one, and they're just a blur in my memory. But what I do enjoy, what I really enjoy in life, is changing myself, is trying to change the way that I approach things, changing the way that I think about things, developing who I am and what my personality is, and getting rid of kinks in my personality and trying out new stuff and not in the sense of trying out new activities, but just trying out new ways of thinking about things and new ways of interacting with people and stuff like that. So it almost seems counter to my character. It would, in some sense, lock me into being a certain person rather than allowing me to evolve. Yeah, for me personally, it's not something that I would be interested in, at least at this point in my life. But like I said, I might change. Tygur Triple says, since you and Bren were together doing TF2 LANs and events before OWL, was it a coincidence that you both ended up in OWL? Or did Blizzard purposely hire both of you because of the shared history, like they did with the casters? So me and Bren recognized the opportunity of going into Overwatch fairly early on. He was somebody that I enjoyed working with in TF2. We were the premier TF2 casting duo at the time at which it would have been reasonable for us to make the jump into Overwatch. We were both European as well, which makes it much easier because in previous events I've casted with a bunch of North American people. I casted with Gex, who I mentioned earlier in this video, casted with Avast before as well, casted with who else have I casted with so many people in NA that but I'm trying to think if there's anybody that you guys might know. Anyway, a bunch of other people anyway. So it made more sense to try and align myself with somebody who was interested in going into Overwatch and who I knew had talent and who was interested in making a career out of it as well. Having said that, when we first started, we thought we might be able to get some gigs as casters, and that became incredibly difficult very early on. ZP and Hags were working with Ghosted Gamer, Mitch and Jason Kaplan were working with ESL. So those were the kind of duos that did those tournaments in Europe, and outside of that, we didn't really have the connections or the networking to be able to put our names forward for a lot of these other standalone tournaments. So we basically had no ability to showcase ourselves. So I went more of the journalism route. Bren did a little bit of it, but also did a bit of streaming and just kind of waited for an opportunity to present itself. Just kept, casting a bunch of other stuff. That was more of it. I really focused into Overwatch. Bren really focused into casting. So he did a bunch of Dota stuff. He did a CSGO tournament. He carried on with TF2. Just made sure that he was keeping up with the casting side of it. Then when they were looking for casters for the Contenders season, they approached Bren to do the casting with ZP, and they approached they got us both for Takeover 2, actually. They approached us both to do casting for Takeover 2. We were both European. They knew that I'd worked with Bren a lot. They'd seen Bren cast in a bunch of different stuff, and we always have that synergy together because we're friends and we do a lot of dumb shit together. So then from Takeover 2, they liked what they saw, so they invited us into Overwatch Contenders season. Was that season 0 or was that season 1? I can't even remember. But anyway, it was the one that Bren was casting with ZP. I was on the desk with Jonny and with Gilfrost and Puckett and Golden Boy and Mr X were casting together for North America. So yeah, they liked Bren's casting, but they didn't know who to put him with, and they liked me on the desk, and they didn't want me to go into casting because they liked me on the desk instead. So then when we'd finished with Contenders, they wanted to bring me in for the desk and didn't have anybody to put Bren with for casting, so they decided to keep the synergy together and put Bren on the desk as well. And that was something totally new for Bren, and I think he was out of his comfort zone at the beginning, but very, very quickly got into it and is now a massive asset for the desk and is so much fun to work with, and yeah, is just completely eaten up the opportunity and is a titan of the analyst desk scene. So in all of these situations, it constantly gets brought up that the reason that they are so high on me and Bren is that we have so much history together and chemistry and synergy together. So yeah, I think it was pretty similar to the casters for the reasons that they picked us both up for the desk. It wasn't so much coincidence. Formation asks, you are playing Mario Kart against Reinforce, Bren, and Mr X. You are currently in last place. Reinforce is in the lead, with Bren and Mr X close behind. You have picked up a blue shell. If you use it, you can take down Bren and Mr X in the blast radius and take first place, at the cost of blue shelling Jonny. What do you do? I'm sorry, What is this? What's the cost of Blue Shelling Jonny? I would fuck over Jonathan in a heartbeat. If we were playing Mario Kart, I would blue shell them all. I wish I had 3 blue shells for them all. I would blue shell every motherfucker. I don't know why you think that I need to treat Jonathan like it's some I don't know, some friend that can't be fucked with. I will fuck with Jonathan every day of the week and take great pleasure in doing so. Precoixious says, what do you think happened in the 2018 playoffs? How did the bottom seeded, inconsistent teams end up beating the 9-1 LA teams? And of course, NYXL. So the first thing to say is that from stage 4 into the playoffs, there was a massive meta shift. It was really quite significant. There was quite a big break. There was a patch change, and the meta changed as a result of that. There was a lot more Orisa Hog with solo healer, with the diva, and then double sniper. That composition was very powerful on a bunch of different maps. People playing out on offense, defense, both sides of Dorado, defensively on King's Row, all of this kind of stuff. So it was a big shift, and it was the biggest shift we'd seen in the whole of 2018 in terms of the meta, because it meant that your flex support was now playing Roadhog in a lot of these situations, because you only had one healer. So it put a lot of pressure on these teams to adapt very quickly and change their calling structure, the way that they worked, who was supporting for who. It put a lot of pressure on the flex supports to be able to perform on a bunch of different heroes. They had to play Tracer, they had to play Roadhog, bunch of different stuff. So the individual matchups, though, Gladiators coming into it had benched Fissure. So they were not considered the favorites in that match at all. But when they played their first match of the set in the quarterfinals, London looked horrible. London had indecisive calling, which was their biggest problem for me, was that both Closer and Badoshin had different views on how the meta wanted to be run, and they ended up trying to play a blend of those two styles and it not working in the slightest. So Gladiators also ran some set strats like the Great Bamboozle. That was in the first 3-0 of the quarterfinal against London. It threw London totally off their game. London changed their roster, brought in Nuss instead of Closer, so now Badoshin's doing all of the calling for the team, also playing the Roadhog for them. No, wait. Well, he was playing Roadhog in a bunch of situations for them. He was also playing a bunch of Tracer. Fury played a bunch of Roadhog. And they just found their groove and popped the fuck off and pounded. So I think the roster change and London solving their issues was very significant. But also the fact that Gladiators benched Fissure set them up to not even be the favorites in that matchup anyway. Then in another quarterfinal, we had Fusion playing against Boston Uprising. Fusion are very streaky, and putting Carpe and EQO on double sniper was all they needed to be able to really unlock a bunch of that potential. Additionally, Sato was a pretty good Orisa and had been a bit of struggling on Rhine when he had to play a bunch of that in stage 4. So they hadn't quite integrated him into the team properly, but on Orisa he was playing very well and synced up excellently with the rest of the team. Boombox was able to play at a reasonable level, but really it was down to Fusion just being carried by Carpe and EQO, just on two of probably their best, most impactful heroes. If you want to clutch, double sniper is probably the clutchest you could be. Boston weren't as comfortable in that meta. They weren't terrible. The game was still close, but they weren't as comfortable. They come third place overall in the overall season, but they were really a dive team. And yeah, Fusion just popped off towards the end with the meta change. In the Valiant game, though, when London played against Valiant, Valiant should have been good in that meta. That's not a meta problem, but they choked. Valiant choked pretty badly. Space ended up underperforming. Custa was caught out of position a bunch by the pulls, which you can eat. But if he's not eating, if Space has already used his defense matrix and isn't eating them, then that's on Custa to adjust his positioning and stuff. They looked a little indecisive with the way that they were playing, messed up a bunch of their kind of default play. I think they got nervous in the playoffs and they ended up choking. And London, again, were playing really, really well. They just, at this point, they just clicked. This changed roster was just pounding. NYXL are the most interesting, though, for me, because people always say they choked in this game against Fusion. I don't think NYXL choked. I think this narrative of NYXL being chokers is actually incorrect. It's just wrong. They were sandbagging at the end of Stage 4. That is blatantly obvious. Go back and watch the VODs. But in the playoffs, it's not that they choked. They had a bad read on the meta. They tried to force Jonak on Zen too much because they've got Jonak on Zen. So they thought, okay, why the fuck are these other teams not running? So they thought, like, the only reason that these guys aren't running Zen is because they don't know how powerful it can be. So they tried to force Zen in a lot of situations where it just doesn't have the added utility of being able to run the Orisa Hog Diva. And if you've got the Orisa Hog Diva, you pound on another team that's just trying to run the Orisa Hog or just trying to run the Orisa Diva. That's why the meta was the way that it was at that point. So I think NYXL had a bad read. They also still played a pretty close series against Fusion. But again, Fusion are streaky. They popped off. It was a good meta for them. And NYXL thought that they could outplay the meta. They thought that they were better than the meta. And it turns out that they weren't. It's a reasonable it's a reasonable punt to make if you're NYXL because you're such a good team. But in this situation, it didn't work out for them. Pogi says, wait there. I'm not going to answer that question, actually. I'm going to save that for next week. I don't have time. Dip says, Zarya gets talked about as the hero who does the majority of the damage in Goats comp, along with Zen. That's my editorialization of his question. But which character is expected to be the primary healer? Given the amount of time Lucios spent on Speed Aura and the importance of speed, I'm guessing Zen because of Trance or Brig. Well, yes, Lucios spent a lot of time on Speed Aura, but you wouldn't consider Zen the primary healer just because of Transcendence. I mean, Transcendence is just an ultimate. You should take Transcendence healing completely out if you're trying to figure out who the primary healer is. Having said that, Zen's Harmony Orb is very important. Having it on the right person is super important. But the most important one to me is getting value out of the Brig. And that means that you have to find opportunities to actually proc your Inspire, to be able to get into the thick of the action without getting punished and set off healing, the AoE heals, by either hitting someone or whip-shotting someone, and still having your abilities available and still having your positioning correct enough to be able to give healing to everybody whilst still having like the whip-shot and the bash available in case you need them for the added utility or to be able to win the fight. You also have the incredibly powerful Armor Pack. And Armor Pack is the biggest source of healing in the whole game. I don't mean over time, but I mean it is game-changing, the Armor Pack, whereas nobody else's healing is. You can amp up your healing as much as you want on Lucio or give as many Harmony Orbs as you want, but you are not going to change the fight with your healing, really, if you're on Lucio or Zen. You certainly would if you were playing Ana, which a bunch of different teams did, and Twilight was fantastic at being able to use his biotic nades and his sleep darts and his healing fantastically, and his nano boosts as well. Really clutch nanos, bringing Bumper back up to full health, which is like you've just been transcended, or transcendenced, for a short amount of time, and then it's also got the damage reduction. Twilight was so good at getting value out of Ana. But okay, most teams playing with Lucio, Zen, Brig, and the Brig Armor Pack is the biggie, because you can save people with it. You can save people who are going for clutch plays. You can boost people back up. You can bait other people in and then use the Armor Pack, and then suddenly you have a health advantage. You can play off the enemy team's Armor Pack. They don't have it down. Okay, we can push them. This kind of stuff. So really, if you need to call anyone a primary healer, I would call Brig the primary healer. But I think even the idea of having a primary healer in the Zen Lucio Brig comp, Brig Goats comp is a bit of a misnomer. It's not really about healing, it's more about shield pressure and stuff like this. Precoixious asks, why do you think Arc could possibly make a huge difference with shot calling in Justice? Fahzix is known for being a good shot caller, yet he's supposedly not shot calling. Now, why do you think Fahzix isn't shot calling? I think it's probably because the communication on that team is dog shit. I think it's because they are full of half Korean speaking people and half English speaking people, and they don't have somebody that's able to translate in the middle and communicate to both sides. Who can do that? Arc can do that. Is Fahzix genuinely a really good shot caller at the Owl level? Press X to doubt. I think that he's probably pretty good at contenders, but I don't know whether he's on the same level as guys like, you know, Arc or Moth or people like this who are really should be respected for their excellent shot calling. So I think having Arc allows somebody in-game to be very decisive and a player with respect that people can listen to, because this team at the moment is a fucking shambles. It's not even that their coaches don't have a clue. Once the players get in the game, they don't understand when they have opportunities to push. They need someone who's decisive in the game, telling them when to do things. And I think Arc can be that presence. He's not the most charismatic dude in the world, but he's got the experience of playing on NYXL, which an NYXL Justice play a similar style to NYXL. They're trying to emulate it. This is Wizard Hyung's style. Arc has played with Wizard before and called using Wizard Hyung's system, and Wizard presumably trusts him as well. So all of these advantages over other people in the Washington Justice. And the fact that Arc is bilingual as well is a huge boon. This team has got to be suffering so much from comms issues as well, and trust issues between different players in their team. So these are the main reasons why I think Arc could make a huge difference. I think it's the number one issue with the Washington Justice is their shot calling once they actually get into game, is taking what the coaches have told them and actually making good decisions in the moment. And I think Arc can help for that. Now, how much difference can one person make? Not that much difference. But do I think there's going to be a difference? Yes, absolutely. And do I think it's going to solve some of their issues? Yes. SwagSolidarity, final question, says, one-on-one with Zoe, on point with Malik, access granted with Matt. If you could pitch or create your own segment for Owl, what would you create? What kind of format would it be? Any sponsor you'd want to work with, etc.? Would your guests be players, coaches, other staff on Owl teams, or all of the above? I've pitched a bunch of different stuff to Overwatch League, and I'm sure you'll see some of the segments coming up at some point. I talked in a question earlier about a segment I want to do, which is like roasting the fans and this kind of stuff. But if I was to do more of a branded segment like the one-on-one with Zoe, on point with Malik, access granted with Matt, where they have other people that they're talking to and interacting with, then I would like to do one with coaches in the scene. I'd like to sit a coach down on an armchair and run some clips or some specific team fights, some strategy from their game, particularly after they've played. So the way that Overwatch League works is, if you are in the Atlantic Division and another team is in the Pacific Division, you only face that team once all year outside of stage playoffs. So if I take two kind of mediocre teams and they've already played their one match of the year, in theory they should be very happy to open up about everything in that game, because the meta is going to change by the time they meet that team again, so there's going to be nothing really usable for the future, and unless they meet them in the stage playoffs, they'll never meet the team again in the future. So this is a fantastic opportunity to dig deep into the minds of coaches and ask them about really specific strategies that they ran, or what they were thinking in this moment, or what was going through your head there. So I want to, and maybe it doesn't have to be coaches. Maybe it could be like very vocal team leaders, like shot callers and coaches, like the brains behind Overwatch, and just getting their thoughts and picking their brains on specifics. And I think we have an unprecedented ability to be able to really ask and dig into specifics because of the schedule, which means that teams don't have to hold their cards too close to their chest. Like, people can talk about what happened in stage 1 all they like now, because the meta is going to be pretty different, and a bunch of the teams are not going to face the teams that they faced in stage 1. So there you go. There's my subscriber Q&A number 4. There you go. The Discord link is below if you want to join my Discord and subscribe to me on Twitch and ask me questions. Otherwise, see you around.